Well, it looks like Thomas Partey is leaving Arsenal. Nothing is confirmed. We're going to go through the reports in just a second. But for most of last season, it felt like it was going to be Thomas Partey's last. Then with a month or so to go of the season, we heard reports from David Ornstein and others that Arsenal had offered him a new deal. Now, the sticking point seems to be he wants a 2-year deal. Arsenal are looking more at a 1-year deal and also don't want a pay rise. Supposedly, Thomas Partey does, if you look at all the reports. But this has also been coming out today. This is very, very fresh news. Fabrizio Romano has said that negotiations between Arsenal and Partey over a new deal are not advancing. He highlights that in bold, that they are not advancing. No agreement so far, and now concrete chances to part ways in the upcoming days. Thomas will be available as a free agent. This is backed up by Ghana SoccerNet. Doc aggregated the news, saying that Partey is set to leave Arsenal. ESPN UK and said that Thomas Partey is set to leave Arsenal. As sources told ESPN, the Ghana midfielder whose contract expires in June is not expected to re-sign with Mikel Arteta's side. Okay, this is not what we all thought was going to happen a few weeks ago. In fact, we all looked and felt pretty confident he was going to be signing a new deal. Him and Zubimendi would be the 6 options, with Declan Rice playing more as a box-to-box role in next season's role, as he has done for the last sort of year and a half. So, where does that leave Arsenal? How do they solve this problem? Because David Ornstein had always said that if Partey were to go, they would be ready to sign a replacement. I think we all agree that needs to happen. So how would that look? Well, one of the options is Lucien Agume, and he has been linked. Massimo de la Cruz Ramirez, who is based in Sevilla, covers Sevilla with 10,000 followers, followed by Doc and others there, had this to say in a translated post that Arsenal are monitoring Sevilla midfielders Agume's situation. The Gunners are looking for a replacement for Thomas Partey, and Agume is one of the names to replace him. There are no contacts yet between the Frenchman and Arsenal. Am I an expert on Agume? Absolutely not. He's 23 years old, plays for Sevilla, French, and a quick look at FBref tells us that his passing data across all midfielders in La Liga looks pretty good. Some decent numbers there, some decent percentile rankings. His defensive numbers look even better. I mean, a lot of very high percentile rankings there. If you want more detail around the player, Agume, this is the only player we've really been linked to, then you should have a look at this on the Cannon podcast. Is Agume the future of Arsenal's midfield? It was done 2 months ago, so shout out to George, Alex and Rohan, who are really ahead of the game when it comes to the players that we could be bringing in if we are to lose players like Thomas Partey, and Ben Mattinson, who of course does the amazing Transfers Explained podcast with me. I'm saying the podcast is amazing. He's amazing. His insight's amazing. I'm not saying that sounded hilarious. Anyway, if you like the podcast, please go follow it. Ben had this to say. The amazing Ben had this to say. That Agume has a good variety to his passes, so many different techniques in his lock end, utilises them well depending on the situation. The final third is able to play incisive passes to unlock the defence. He reads the game effectively off the ball too. And in this one, he literally said back on January the 15th that Lucien Agume and Martin Zubimendi are the clearest Partey and Jorginho replacements respectively. How did he always do this? He did this with Calafiori, saying he was kind of perfect for Arsenal. Then we go sign him 6-7 months later. He's ahead of the game too. That's why I invite him on the podcast. His insight is amazing. I think the podcasts are good. Never mind. Let's not do that again. But the question in all this is, do Arsenal need to spend more money on a defensive midfielder? Is that really where we are again? Looking at goalkeepers, looking at left backs, looking at DMs, it just feels like a relentless churn of money in similar positions, and you can even talk about the left 8 and central midfield in general. So let's break this down, because I have a slightly different thought process around this. The question of do Arsenal need a DM obviously is answered by what we have. I want to show you the legit options for Arsenal's midfield next season, assuming that Martin Zubimendi arrives, and I've broken the players down more into their favourite position and also their favourite foot, and there's a reason for that. Zubimendi's a defensive midfielder, he's right-footed. Declan Rice is more of an all-round central midfielder, can play as a 6, but is right-footed too. And then 3 left-footers in the team, in Mikel Merino is more of a central midfielder, and Ødegaard and Waneri are seen as more... They're 10s, they're final third players. That's the responsibility that Arteta gives them. Though I do think Ødegaard will be used slightly deeper. More on that in a little bit. But then I've got the crisis options for Arsenal's midfield. If it gets absolutely decimated by injury, we've seen that at times. What do Arsenal do? And I've got Ben White and Jurriën Timber, 2 right backs who are right-footed, who could slot into midfield. Ben White's played there, Timber's brother's played there, and he's got the attributes for it. Why not? He's asked to invert into midfield. I think he could do a good job there. Miles Lewis-Skelly grew up as a central midfielder, but has been playing as a left-back. He's a left-footer. Fabio Vieira, if you keep him another year, that's another player you could use, a left-footer in there too. Leandro Trossard is a starting left-winger, right-footed, pretty much both footed, and Kai Havertz, of course, was originally signed to play in midfield more, but is a striker really in this squad. So those are the crisis options. When you add them all together, that's 11 players that I've mentioned there that could all play in midfield for Arsenal next season, and that feels like quite a lot. And quite a few of them, you've got, if we pull that list back up, White, Timber, Lewis, Skelly, they are fullbacks who could be playing as the six, but you're taking from those are your three best fullbacks in the squad, and you're asking them to do a job in midfield potentially, or in what's already a depleted front line, you're asking Trossard or Havertz to do a job. So I don't love it, but of course, if push comes to shove, there are players you can turn to there. But ultimately, I'm not presenting these options saying, we're covered, don't worry, we really need a striker, we need a left winger, go big on those, Partey leaves, it's not a problem. It is a problem, for a few reasons, but I don't think the solution has to be a direct replacement. This link I thought was really interesting. Arsenal have added Morgan Rogers to their list of attacking targets. However, any deal to acquire the player from Aston Villa would be costly, according to Gary Jacob. Now, what do we know? We know that they've got PSR concerns, Villa. They're probably the only club in the Premier League that have real concerns. Gary Jacob, very reliable. And Arsenal could do with a player like this. Mikel Arteta said that we need creativity in the team. One of the last things he said in the weeks leading up to the end of the season, he said that creativity was something this squad needed. That's really interesting. I hadn't really heard him speak of it in that way. Maybe he talked about being more clinical in the final third, and he's never said no to a striker, but creativity? Now, I don't know if Rodgers is necessarily creative in terms of silk and the final ball or whatever. I think he's got that in him, but I think he's certainly a final third player that is creative in terms of the chaos he can cause because of his ability to drive with the ball, to attack space. He's a carrier. He does have a good pass on him too. He can be effective from right, left and central space. He could probably even play up front. And this is a player I think would fit really, really well into Arsenal's team to solve problems we have, but actually to give us a balance to our midfield options. So let me show you them here. So my preferred options for next season's Arsenal midfield is Zubimendi and Declan Rice to be recognised as the starting sixes in this team. The fact they're both right-footed is good because we tend to invert the left back, so there's a really nice balance there. Then you've got Marino and Ødegaard who play as more left eights. Both left-footed, both can be effective up the pitch, both can be good dropping deep and build up. Mainly Ødegaard. I think Marino could work on that side of the game, but I don't think he's as bad as people say. And then Nwaneri and Rodgers are two players that are really final third players. They can carry the ball, they can be effective, they can get big numbers. Ødegaard too, you can still play Zubimendi, Rice and Ødegaard as your starting midfield three, and we know the balance that has, but you can turn to Nwaneri, Rodgers and Marino to give you different things. Marino for his late runs into the box, Rodgers for his kind of carrying through central spaces, and Nwaneri for his ability to combine with the Saka and effect in wider areas, and also he can provide moments of magic too from distance. I think that's a really, really balanced set of midfield options. 3 right-footers, 3 left-footers, different profiles for sixes, different profiles for left eights, and different profiles for the right eight. So I think if you're going to lose Thomas Partey, I don't think you necessarily have to find the next Thomas Partey. I think you can go and find another player that allows us to readdress the balance of our midfielders in a different way. And hey, Nwaneri can play on the right, Rodgers can play on the left. And it gives Arsenal unpredictability where, yes, you might be spending big on Rodgers. Yes, you might be worried about Nwaneri's future and his development into this squad. But who's to say you don't have a game where Zubimendi, Rice, Ødegaard start, Rodgers is on the left with Saka and your new striker up front, or Kai Havertz, or Nwaneri starts on the right so Saka gets a break and you've still got that starting midfield three. I think the balance in terms of fluidity, rotations, different options to solve different problems, I think it works. Now there is a counter. There is an absolute counter to this. Our starting 11 against PSG meant that in the absence of Jorginho and Partey being able to play, Rice dropped to the 6, Marino went to the left 8 and Trossard went up front. We didn't have control of that game in the way we did against Real Madrid. Why is that? Is it because Rice isn't as good picking up the ball from the back and controlling a game as Jorginho and Partey? Is it because Marino in the left 8 wasn't really the solution, didn't allow us to press high up the pitch and create transition moments like Declan Rice allowed us to against Real Madrid and to really run that midfield physically? Or is it because without, Marino up front and a focal point, Trossard played there, so we lost something in terms of playing through our striker? I don't know. What I would say is, how often are you playing against a team like PSG who will do this to you at the Emirates? Have more possession, have more shots, and anyone who watched that game will know they had total and utter control. Actually for most parts, Arsenal fought their way back into it by dominating physically in midfield. I don't think Declan Rice is a bad 6. I think he's a terrific 6, but he might be a better 8. But why can't we have options? Why can't we do different things with our midfield? That's what I'd like to see. Not two players that necessarily do the exact same thing, but two players that give you different ideas, give you different options, and Arsenal can play with the balance of their midfield in different ways next season. That is how I would like Arsenal to address Thomas Partey's potential departure, and it's looking like it's going that way. Now, other news, Lewis Skelly is signing a new deal. Didn't cover it on the Goonerverse too because I wanted to talk about it today. With the Partey stuff, it's interesting because Lewis Skelly did get a couple minutes as a six, more than a couple minutes as a six last season towards the end of the campaign. Is Arteta trialling him there? Is there another way we could build the midfield dynamic to have Lewis Skelly in midfield if Calafiori becomes more the left back that we spent £40 million on that Arteta seems to really trust too? I love your thoughts in the comment section below. How would you replace Thomas Partey if it comes to that? And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and go check out the amazing Transfers Explained. I'll catch you all in a bit.